So we are thankful to Salil. Salil Shankar is the presenter today. He is the creator of AutoDocAi. In short, you must have seen his LinkedIn profile also. It's there on the event page. He is a seasoned technical communication expert with over 14 years of experience. And he worked as last principal technical writer at Drova. And during that, he has built AutoDocAi to test the capabilities of Gen AI. In this demo, Salil will share what he has built and then he will demonstrate the tools like this one and how it can transform the documentation workflow from code parsing to polished prose. So I'll hand it over to Salil, rest with him. He will demo and then please wait. In case in between, if you will have question that cannot wait, please type your question in the chat box. We will take it up in the end, but please do not unmute in between. Okay, so thank you, Salil, for joining. Over to you.
Uh, Okay. Hi, everyone. Salil this side, and I've been a technical writer for about 14 years now. And with AI and things like that, taking up a lot of mind share and these things developing at a really, really rapid pace, I thought that maybe it's a good idea for us as technical writers to leverage some of these tools and see how our workflows will make use of these tools and the technology that presents the opportunity in front of us. How can we uh, capture that opportunity? So I'll not waste a lot of time. I'll directly get to the demo and we can look at things that this technology does. I'll share my screen and hopefully,
Yes.
uh, hopefully everyone can see my screen. And so there are three parts to this particular product. I mean, it started as a CLI tool, and we'll demo the CLI tool mostly, and we'll look at the GitHub app and web app a little bit. So, uh, what this particular tool does is that you provide your app's code to this tool, and this tool will try to read your code and it will try to write documentation for it. How good its output is, we'll discuss in a little bit, but the very simple idea was that code has all the context, right? It has all the decisions, it has all the engineering decisions, it has all the product decisions. And once it reaches a certain level of maturity, it has everything in place that can inform us about what the product is, what the features are, and how could I use that information to turn all of that into documentation, right? So we will start, first of all, we'll look at a very simple product. Uh, we'll look at a IT tracking tool, and I'll start the demo. And if we go to 50/50, we look at, okay, this is okay. Uh, uh, right. Should right? So this is a very simple product where you can provide an employee name, email, things like that, and you can assign a device, laptop, monitor, keyboard, and it'll provide a list of all these things. If we want, we can try doing this. Let's say rate of example.com asset model is, let's say, MacBook. It's a laptop, right? And we'll issue the asset. And we can see that the data gets updated, things like that. Now, as technical writers, if we have to document it, we would try to use this. This also has a backend, we can use the API to create documentation for it. We would test the API and things like that. And I thought that can we make AI read this code, or can we make a program read this code and build a context, send that context to AI and see if it can generate documentation. So that is the product and that is the CLI part. And I'll show that piece on how the CLI works. And then we'll get to the GitHub app and potentially that will give a better understanding of how majority of the people who would use a utility like this would actually use this in real world. So if I go to cd code AutoDocAi, yeah, and if I have to run this, so it'll be cli.py. I would tell the backend code lives in bracket app. I would tell that front end lives in app. Sorry, uh, lives in bracket app front end, and I would tell it to output all the docs in the bracket docs folder. Right. So the CLI would run. It would look at all the files. It found all the backend routes, right? And it is now writing documentation. It is going through the code and it is going to write. And this is happening in a sense in the backend where it is reading all the code. It has already written one document. It'll take a while to write all the documentation. So what I would do rather is to show the documentation it has already written in the past. So I'll uh, show the documentation that it has already done, right? I'll open this folder and uh, what happened? So, right. So this is the documentation it would write. Uh, if you look at the API documentation, it read through the Python code and figured out. Sorry, is there a question? Okay, no problem. So, uh, what this particular utility did was that it read through some of the backend code and figured out that there is a device history API endpoint. This is the path, this is the HTTP method. All of this is written using AI, and none of this is human written content. And the interesting bit is that it did everything that was required, right? So it could even figure out an example that people are going to need an example on how to use the API endpoint. So it came up with a curl snippet in addition to all the things that are available from the code and also the path, right? If we look at one of the endpoints where it accepts a form, right? So it also tells you that request body should have all these fields and the response will have a message that says that the asset was issued and issued assets ID, another curl request example. All of this is AI written. None of this is human written, right? And everything came from the backend code that it could read. That was one part of the story. In addition, I provided the front end code also to the utility, and the utility could generate UI documentation. Now, is it perfect? I would not say it's perfect. But the important part is that it could get an idea of everything that is available on the UI. So for example, there is an issue asset form, there is an asset table, there is a device history section. So if you look at the UI, it could get an idea of all the components that are there on the page of the application. Now, how to use the app component, ideally, it should say how to use the Track It app or something like that. So maybe that. So we'll have to tighten the prompt a little bit to tell AI that instead of saying app component, call the application the way it is. But despite all of that, right, it provides all the information that is available, right? Uh, it tells you that there is an asset table where all the asset list is available to you, right? There is a notification component, right? Now there is all this is supposed to be internal documentation, right? So this is the component JavaScript information. It should go somewhere here, but that did not happen. That is where we have to fine tune it. But then again, the good part is that AI can understand the code and generate documentation, right? And in fact, it also provides a procedure on how to use the form, and it provides steps on how to issue an asset to an employee. So that was the interesting bit. It is a very basic application. It is a very small application, so it does it rather quickly. In a fairly complicated application, this could be not as good as the way it looks like right now, but still, the idea was that there is no human involvement at this point. And if you have a technical writer on your team and you give that particular technical writer this tool, the good bit is that the technical writer will get all the documentation available to them, even if it is not perfect. That's where the professional touch comes into play, where you have a person who can take this information and turn it into useful documentation. But imagine the amount of time that you have saved because you already have a first draft, which is decent enough in the first place. It's available to you, right? And if you look at the CLI, I think it should be done. Yeah. So all this documentation is done. Meanwhile, over the discussion that we were having, the documentation is done. It took about 1.5 minutes to generate all this documentation for this app. If we were to do, if we were to take a stab, we would take maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, something like that. But AI did it for us for in about 1.5 minutes. So that is the value that AI brings to the table. You have a tool that is in place. Now, what I also wanted to show was that in a general day-to-day use case, this may not be the workflow that people might follow, right? That technical writers will get access to the code and then they'll run a CLI utility on top of it. What I wanted to show also was that a workflow where all the code already lives in a GitHub repository. And when you create a pull request, the utility will automatically trigger, right? So I'll quickly go to Trackit app, and what I'll do is I'll get, check out main, pull, I'll create a new branch. Yeah, let's say walk two, right? And if I open this and if I make changes, let's say change to show PR workflow. And if I go to the GitHub desktop and I'll commit this, I'll publish branch, I'll create a pull request, create a pull request, right? And this is where there is a check that gets triggered. And this check is actually AutoDocAi app running in the background. This is how most people will probably use this kind of a utility where they will integrate the AutoDocAi GitHub app, and the app is going to create a copy of the repository, send it to the app, run all the scripts, and provide all the changes back as a commit. Now, I'm sorry, is there a question? No. Okay, fine. So, fine. So this will run in the background and this will do what it was doing in the CLI. But I'll also take you to a previous pull request where I can show what happens once everything is in place, right? So if you look at the sixth pull request on this repository, the report provides that these are the documentation pieces that got impacted, and these pieces will have some kind of a change. And it will also commit those changes. So I'll show you the commit, right? The second commit comes from the Autodoc AI tool itself. And if you go to this commit, it will show the documents that it updated inside the repo, right? It will provide all the documentation updates, it will change. So what it does is that it takes away some of the burden from the technical writer that you have to always know what has changed with each release cycle, right? So for example, if there is a pull request that is ready to be merged, the documentation team will get a dump of all the documents that will get impacted and a draft to go along with it. So obviously it will not be perfect. You'll still need a person to go through all these changes, put everything in place. The standard workflow where you talk to your stakeholders, your product managers, your engineers, that is not going to change. But the thing is that it makes your life so much better, and things are so easy now because AI is going to do the impact analysis for you and give you a good enough understanding. Because as I said, that code will have all the context, right? It'll have all the decisions in place. It'll tell you what has changed with each release. And once everything is in, what you can do is, if you think that all these changes are good enough, because there will be releases where these changes that the AI has suggested are good enough. You don't have an ask from a technical writer to review all these changes and confirm all the updates. What you can simply go and you can approve this, and you can simply approve and squash and merge, right? And all the AI suggested changes would go into the main branch, and then their own pipeline of build and things like that will happen, right? So this was the wide idea when I thought that I'm going to start with an AI technical writer of sorts, where you have some entry level work that in some cases you would have a junior writer, or in some cases you would do, some cases you would get stuck with getting a download of all the changes that are going to go in. But then you realize that you have a utility that will do it for you, and then you can take your work forward from there. So this was the demo, this was the utility that I wanted to show. And I thought it'll be a good thing to discuss with you guys to get a feedback on how it looks. It's very limited in its functionality right now. Like, it is only dependent on Python-based, Flask-based backends. It cannot read code from other programming languages like Java and things like that. But that is again something that we can add based on the interest that we get from the field right now. Not much traction there, but I'm trying to get real potential customers of sorts who can try this out and tell me how good or bad this is, and maybe then take it from there. So Puneet, this was the demo mostly, and uh, we can move to the next part where we take questions and discussions. We can open up for discussions. Puneet, if you're saying something on mute, you might be on mute. No, I can see Anumita has a question.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Salil. Thank you for that session, for the demo. I had a question. It may be very basic, but when you ran the application, the IT tracking application, was it in your local desktop, or is it required? Is it required to be, somewhere in GitHub or common repository? I mean, I'm like little bit new to this, so uh, for this. AutoDoc AI to read the UI running application where it's supposed to be, like a server running in your desk. How is the works like that?
So it's a very good question, Anumita, because I support all use cases. So if it's a local app, you have your code on your laptop. AutoDocAi
Okay,
comes with a CLI, right? So the CLI, you
right.
can tell CLI, which is the demo that I ran today, was that CLI will uh, read your code. You need to provide the path of your code on your laptop, and it will read the code and provide and generate documentation for it. I also provide a web app where you can create a zip of all your codes repositories folder, and you can upload it. It's on autodocai.net, and you can upload it. In addition, I have built, which was the last part of my demo, I built a GitHub app also. So if your code is on GitHub, you can install the Autodoc AI app, and then it will read code from your GitHub repository also. So I have
Wow.
supported all use cases. Yeah.
So all three are there, from desktop to web-based as well as on GitHub. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, I understood all these three from the API documentation that is generated because it's reading the code. But after you're deploying this web application, like which has a front end and all, and I'm taking from the mobile, so I couldn't understand, I couldn't read properly, but probably some end user documentation is generated, right, based on the front end. So I had a question related to that. That once you run the application, then only this AutoDoc AI is seeing what are the fields, or how is it checking based on the code itself is able to know that okay, I need to write a little bit concept and then a procedure how an end user will go. Wanted to know a little
Yes.
bit on that side.
So it does not need context. It will read your front end code, and it will
Okay.
try to understand how it will get rendered in the browser. So the system is such that it has knowledge of majority of the front-end frameworks. So
Mm.
React right now, what we support is React-based front-end frameworks. But I have tried it with Alpine-based front-end frameworks also, and it works there as well, right? So what it does is it tries to figure out the type of JavaScript code and the type of HTML that will get generated, and it will make sense of how it is going to make the backend API calls and how the user journey would look like on the UI itself. And
Okay,
I,
great.
on purpose, did not provide any doc strings or comments in the code. I just wanted to see, without any additional context, how good AI is in terms of interpreting the front end and its features. And what I realized was there are certain things that it's missing, but mostly it's still good at creating a first draft, right?
Right, right.
So no additional context. It's not necessary for you to run your application. You just provide access to your
The
code.
source code.
Yeah. And it'll make sense from that.
Right. It's kind of reverse engineering the code and coming
Yes.
out with the learning. Uh,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Puneet, you're
Thanks,
still on
Amita,
mute,
for the
actually.
question. Yeah, Salil, so we have two questions in chat. So, Puneet asks, do the folders have to be in a set format in the repo?
Right. So for an early version, yes, but I have some conditions there, right? So for front end, it's largely successful even without a set format. It can figure out if there is presence of JavaScript and JSX files in the repository, and it will figure out that, all right, this is the front end code, and this is what I need to look at, and this is how the front end code is generated. For backend, it is specifically looking for Flask-based conventions, that there has to be a routes file, there has to be a model file, there has to be additional utility files. But that is again because we are only working with Flask-based backends right now. As we add more and more general purpose backends, I believe this is going to get better, and it won't be necessary for you to follow a specific convention to understand that these files have to be present. Which means that it is going to be a relatively costly operation because it will take some time and tokens, API tokens on the open AI side to make to make that judgment and get an understanding of it. But from where things stand at this point, yes, there has to be a convention specifically for backend and API documentation, but it'll get better.
Thank you, Salil. So, Puneet has one more question to that. Is this using agentic capabilities or RAG?
So this is using largely agentic capability right now. We are not using RAG because we are mostly testing on smaller repositories. So I can parse through the entire file structure, file system, and get things in place and make some context into it. But for larger code bases where you have to have layers and layers of file structure and code paths and code trees, that's where RAG will come into play. So I'll have to bring that into play for code bases that have millions of lines of code. So agentic is good enough for smaller repositories like the one that I demoed. But you are right. For a bigger code base where you have to go through trees of code and trees of code paths, that's where RAG will be a tool that I'll have to bring in.
Thank you so much. Ravi has one question. Does this tool follow style guide rules?
No, no, it does not. But the question is so interesting, and I have thought about it. It's a trivial change. That is the good bit. So you just need one markdown file that has the context where you tell the agent that you have to use, let's say, Microsoft Style Guide or Google Developer Style Guide, because the good part is that these style guides are available publicly. Now they're no longer, you don't have to buy them. They have websites for these particular style guides, and you have to bring all those things into the system, and it's going to be one file change, and it will follow all the stylistic requirements that you have. So it's a trivial change from the system point of view.
Wonderful. So probably he's coming from, we had another presentation a few weeks before where somebody has built a style checker tool, actually, using MSTP and all. So, okay, so moving on to next question. Sagar asks, do you think we can make this tool work for how to use case or troubleshooting documentation?
So if you have time, would you like to see something interesting?
Sure,
Right?
go ahead.
Sure. Right. So let's see if we can pull this right. So we generated all the documentation, right? And what I also wanted to show you that I also have something called um doc loader. So I'm not going to run this because this is going to be okay. Right. So we have CD code doc loader, right? I'll show you this thing. What this thing does is, this is the rag bit that I think Puneet was asking about, that there is some rag component to this. This is still a work in progress. I did not want to cover this today, but I want to show this. If it works, it will be truly magical, because what it does is that it will dump all the documentation into a vector database, which is the main component of a RAG-based system. And I have built a Slack bot, and I'll run that Slack bot. Python Slack bot dynamic actions.py. This is okay, right. So we have this thing running, and I'll have cd. What do you call that? Is task hive, cd task hive, and I just hang in with me, guys. This could be something that you'll enjoy, right? So I'll show you something. Where is my Slack? It's not up. I hope everyone can see my screen and I'm not doing this in blind.
No, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's see. AutoDoc AI, and I'll run this query. What I wanted to show. Let's see if it works or not. Right. And this is the second bit that I was playing with. And okay, so this is work. So what I wanted to show you guys was, it's possible for me to take all the documentation, put that in a RAG-based system, and connect that RAG-based system to an LLM, and then connect that particular interface to a Slack bot, where this is your front end now. So you normally, when you go to documentation, you want to use a product. I imagined a platform where you go to documentation and ask documentation that, see, this is what I want to do with the product. And what documentation tells you is that, okay, fine. I know what are the steps that I need to perform. I'll perform those steps for you. So what this particular agent did was that it went through the documentation, looked at the steps that it wanted to perform, and it performed those steps on your behalf. So this is the data that is available on the UI as well. So if you look at the UI, this is the UI. And if I provide the same thing here, this is what you would do on the UI. This is the data that you would get. This is the data that you are getting here as well. So yes, in fact, not only can it write documentation, the how-to parts, it can perform those steps for you also. So that's also possible with AI. The second part that I think it was Ravi who asked this question was that, can it work with troubleshooting documentation also? So I did a little bit of hard coding in the backend, but the interesting bit is that I would like to demo that bit to you also, the troubleshooting part as well, right? So let's say I'll cook up another terminal here, and I will try to generate a fail scenario here, right? So the code, I'll go to track it, and I'll run the stop demo.sh, and this is going to bring down the service. right? So this is going to be some kind of a failure scenario where the production service is down, it is not working. Now, if I try to do this, what it will do is it should provide some documentation, right? So if I do this and it'll try to perform the steps on your behalf, but because the service is down, yeah. Now it has looked up. Now this is again coming from documentation, right? Type AutoDocAi to recover. This is the standard troubleshooting information that we provide to our customers generally, that you can do A, B, C things to troubleshoot issues with the setup. So I'll do that, right? And if I'll try to recover the service, right, it will try to bring it back online, right? So I'm getting the message that the service is back online. Now, if I try to do this again, right, it should work again, right? Now it will not provide documentation on troubleshooting. It will do the job for you, right? So interesting, cool stuff. So this is the interesting bit, that not only it can write troubleshooting steps based on the information that is available inside the code, it can also perform those steps for you. And that is the interesting part, that it can do a lot. So hopefully that answers the question.
Amazing. I think the question was simple, but the answer that you provided is a lot more than what we would have expected. And no wonder Puneet says that, is this Salil 2.0?
Uh,
Uh,
so the thing
Yeah,
is that, again, see, we as technical writers, right? Our ultimate goal is to solve problems, right? And the problems that we solve is, when we write documentation, it's a twofold problem that we solve. That we want our customers to use our products effectively, and if they run into problems with the product, then our documentation should help them solve the problems with the product. And I believe that with the tools and technology that we have available to us today, it's it's only going to get better from here. It'll be amazing where we can go, and where we as technical writers can take our platform to the next level. Yeah.
very true. Okay, so I think I see some more interest in the repo and all. So Prashant asked, can you share the GitHub links and website link
Sure.
to use Autodoc AI?
Sure. I'm going to put all of that information here.
Yeah, you can paste it
So,
in the chat, and when we send the email for recording, there also we will share
right.
it.
So Flask app, track it. And I have another Flask app that is called Task Hive, right? So these are available. Autodoc AI source code is not open source right now. It is closed source. It's private right now. But if you want to use that as a web app, it's available on autodocai.net. So you can, if you want to try, what you can do is you can download Trackit or Task Hive repositories folders as zip, and you can upload those on autodocai.net, and it'll let you uh, download the zipped uh, documentation to your computer, right? So all these links are available in the chat. You can access that. If you are interested in running through the code, I would urge you to do it privately, because I don't know if this can be a startup and I'll be a rich guy maybe tomorrow. I don't know any of those things right now. So I've kept Autodoc AI's code private, but I'll be happy to talk to you about it. But I would urge you to do it in a private place.
Awesome. And certainly, so I think you mentioned private already, but so Puneet has mentioned in the group, if you would like to have a collaborative approach, I would suggest Puneet, probably you can ping him separately and take it forward. His LinkedIn profile is very much there on the event page. And yep, that's fine. Salil?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I see Sagar has some following up further. What you demonstrated, execution of steps is already being taken care by specialized AI tools. What about auto creation or updation of existing documents? How to troubleshooting use cases articles?
So it's a complicated problem to solve where you have a documentation site and you have a lot of documentation already in place. What you can do is that you can still use this utility. It will generate a lot of documentation and use the existing documentation as a context kind of a thing where you put all that documentation in a vector database and then make the AI learn from the existing documentation and the changes to the code. And then it can provide changes to existing documentation too, because even with the documentation that I have on a very basic small application, it can still create a doc impact analysis. And now, again, the doc impact analysis is not perfect right now, but it can still figure out changes in documentation, right? A more advanced tool would have feedback mechanism in place, which will learn from existing documentation. But the problem that you want to solve is very much within the realm of possibility with the tool that we have right now. We are not talking about tool that will come down the line. With what we have right now, it's very much within the realm of possibility. Maybe a week or 2 weeks effort is going to bring that thing into the fold.
Okay, wonderful. So, yep, any more questions, people?
I had a question, Puneet.
Yes,
Shall I go ahead?
Anamita. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Salil, I understand the tool is extremely helpful for where you have the source code available. But like I'm giving an example of my current project where I interact only with product managers, and and in enterprise app, and where source code and all are very proprietary, they would not share with everyone. In that case, how do technical right? I mean, in most commercial places the source code is the most precious thing, like even from your conversation we come to know. So that's not something people will upload or give away very easily. In that case, how do is there any way to get help? Many in our case the application is deployed on tenants and or virtual machines, and that is, and then as writers we explore the application, try out various use cases and then come up with the end user documentation. In such cases, how would this tool help?
Excellent question, Anumita. And that is the startup opportunity. And that is the reason why I came up with the idea of a GitHub app, right? So that is the business use case, because what happens is that no company would want anyone to look into their code, except if they have a licensing agreement where they have dedicated tools that actually look into the code. Because whichever company you are working at, you might have tools that are, let's say, there might be a CI/CD tool, like whether it's Harness, whether it's CloudBees, whether it's some kind of a Jenkins-based setup, which is actually right now looking into the code and building it, compiling it, and deploying it to some kind of a place, right?
Hmm.
Those tools are generally they are third-party startups that are providing that kind of infrastructure to read the code, build it, and deploy it. What I am thinking is that this tool is going to be, it will be an add-on to one of those build and deploy tools where your businesses, your companies will already have some kind of a licensing agreement. And this product will have a partnership with those companies where already those permissions are in place where we can read your code and generate these kinds of things. But that is the business proposition, which is where licensing and compliance and terms and conditions come into play, where you seek approval from the company that we are going to do this on your code, and we will make sure that nobody gets access to it except the utility itself. So
Right.
amazing question,
Yeah.
excellent question. That is also an opportunity for me to look into, where there is a pricing strategy in place where I can make money off of it.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Joining, and it's a very wonderful session. And yeah, you talked about recording. So we do record, share this record on the YouTube. So if you want, you can take it for this demo. Yep. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again, Salil, for joining.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity. I'm really glad that I could show these things to you, and hopefully I can talk to you guys more about this. So thank you so much.